Yeah, I feel like the net has decided that Vanderbilt and Tennessee are just fixed in
Maybe.
respective places with the net because it seems like whatever happens, those teams don't move. All right.
All right, we got
The
a 10-minute
Commodores.
rant coming on Vanderbilt right now.
Yeah,
I got
boy.
10 minutes for this
We
rant.
both heard
So,
it this weekend. All right, I'm gonna give you some foundational information to start this. Okay, here's the nitty gritty on the Commodores: 89 in the net, 19 strength of schedule, 120 non-conference strength of schedule. There's been a little bit of a myth that their non-conference strength of schedule was really strong. The net strength of schedule does not agree with that. Okay, the strength of resume computers have got Vanderbilt at averaged at 62. The predictives have got Vanderbilt averaged at 85, which is why Vanderbilt is 89 in the net. Vanderbilt has lost 5 home games. It has gone 4-5 on the road, 1-2 away from home. 4-7 quad 1, 3-3 quad 2, 2-1 quad 3, 6-1 quad 4. Big wins. That's what Vanderbilt has going for it. Right now, it's got 4 against teams that I think would be in the tournament. However, 3 of those might be 8 seeds or worse. Tennessee at home, Arkansas at home, Auburn at home, and Pitt at home. All right, that's part 1, Blake. Do you want to respond to that, or do you want me to go to part 2? Because I think part 2 might be the most relevant thing that we can talk about with Vanderbilt.
no, just I think everything you said, just make sure that you heard everything that you said. Is all I'm saying before we go on to part 2. And then we can now carry on into part 2 of this conversation.
Okay, part 2. This team a year ago, and I don't know if this is pre-tournament or after the tournament, but the numbers wouldn't be much different. This team had a net of an 80. This team went 12-8 in this league because one thing that Vanderbilt fans are really banking on is good league record, which has yet to be determined, but a lot of Vanderbilt's, well, what if his projection? So this team a year ago had an 80 net, had a 12-8 record in a league that was better than the SEC is now. It had a net strength of schedule of 37, which is a little weaker than Vandy's. It had a non-conference strength of schedule of 255, which is significantly weaker. It also had a quad 4 loss, which Vanderbilt has. Its quad 4 loss was worse than Vanderbilt's. Had 2 quad 3 losses, which Vanderbilt's got 1. So the bad was worse than what Vanderbilt's got. In quad 2, it went 2-4, whereas Vanderbilt is 3-3. But, Blake, here we go. Good wins, my goodness. Because this team had them. It was 7-7 in quad 1, but I believe this team had 7 or 8 of those that were top 7 NCAA seeds or higher. The team we're talking about is Rutgers. Its wins last year were against Purdue at home, Iowa at home, Illinois at home, Wisconsin on the road, Ohio State at home, Michigan at home, Indiana on the road. Also beat Michigan State at home. And a lot of those teams, I think I counted up that compared to Vanderbilt, and the team we're talking about is Rutgers. If you kind of subtract out what Vanderbilt did from what Rutgers did, if that makes sense, try to put them on an even playing field. Rutgers had 5 wins from teams seeded 3-7 in the field of 68 that Vanderbilt didn't have. That is a massive gap between big wins. Again, the Rutgers bads are worse than Vanderbilt's. But if you put both on a scale, does it balance out? I think it balances a lot more in Rutgers' favor. And Blake, what did the committee do with Rutgers a year ago?
They got sent a date.
Right. So barely in with that resume.
All right. So, one thing Vanderbilt, remember, we're doing this in the context of they need to, in my opinion, win out. Are you in disagreement with that, or do you think 3-1 is acceptable?
I think 3-1 maybe with the win in the conference tournament, and that's a big maybe. I don't know. The fans seem convinced that if they go 3-1, they're getting in. I'm nowhere close
3-1
to
with a
being
loss to
convinced.
Kentucky on the road, you're getting in. Let's use that as a potential option. All right, as long as you don't
I
lose the
think
first game.
3-1 with a loss at Kentucky, you're being considered, but
All
I
right.
think it's on the low end of the bubble.
The problem in that is that the Kentucky win is going to do the most for you in the computers because it will push you up the furthest. LSU will not, Florida will not, Mississippi State will not, to the degree, I think, of winning at Kentucky. Now, it will push you up some by beating. That's where the Florida problem. I think Florida is causing Vanderbilt the most issues right now because, it's no Castleton. Like, part of that, you're going to look at it and say, well, Florida's kind of going in the wrong direction.
Well, wait a minute. They did beat Florida with Castleton. No, the rematch will be
Yes,
without.
but that's my point, is that Florida is going backwards, right? So if Florida's going backwards, it's not helping you because you want Florida going forwards, and I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. So that's all I'm saying. Now they could beat Kentucky and maybe that looks a bit better, but that's one thing. So let's just use the 3-1 argument because I'm going to try to do this quickly because I know I've got to hurry here. So, all right, so that's one part of the argument. Let's say they go 3-1, okay? Well, let's say some of those losses are close, or excuse me, some of the losses are close, some of the wins are close, or the one loss is close. You know what I'm saying? Here's what I put on Twitter yesterday, okay? And here's why Vanderbilt is such a strange example this season. They have 15 wins right now, okay? 11 of those wins are by 8 points or less. Remember, this is the theme we've used all year with Vanderbilt. Win or lose, it's going to be close, okay? 8 of their 15 wins are by 5 points or less. What do they have that no other team has that we're talking about right now in the tournament conversation? They have a loss in every quadrant, right? They have a loss everywhere. Quad 4, quad 3, quad 2, quad 1. So they've got losses everywhere. So
5 outside of quad 1.
So that is not helping either. All right. And something else to consider here. I know the computers may only consider it to a point, but we talked about this earlier. Okay. They have a 57-point loss on their schedule, on their resume. All right. That's something other teams that we're considering do not. Georgia's not an NCAA tournament team. They've got one of those losses, but Vanderbilt now has a 57-point loss to the top team in the field, which is okay, I guess. If you're going to have it to somebody, lose it to the top team in the field that way. The problem becomes if you add the next element into this, right? Well, we talk about the wins. Okay. Well, they lost to Grambling by 2. They lost to NC State by 4. They lost to Missouri by 3. They lost to A&M by 6. And someone used this term on Twitter, and I'm gonna use it myself. Vanderbilt is the ultimate coin flip team. If you're looking at probability, right, and you're trying to figure out what do I make of this team, how could the computers possibly have the computers are stunned, like they are confused, are they not? We talk about like the Tennessee effect. Well, Tennessee has all these great wins where they just dominate teams and their efficiency numbers. All this are great, but like Vanderbilt's efficiency numbers on defense are not great. And remember, that factors in some to like the net and those kind of things. But they also have to factor in that if you play the same schedule, Chris, think about that, right? With Vanderbilt, if you play the same schedule 27 games in, think about how many possible results you could have based on how close some of these games have been, win or lose. And so I think it's like, it almost feels like the net and some of these other, you just don't know what to do because a lot of wins have been close. Some of a good portion of their losses have been close. So it's like, what do you make of that? And they don't, what they don't have that some of the other teams have is these just convincing wins, right? Just a ton of convincing wins, maybe in the non-conference, some in the SEC part of the schedule. I'm not saying it's going to keep them out. I'm just saying if you look at it as a whole, which we have to, they've played 27 games. They've won 15 of them, but they've also lost 12 of them. And if you look at it as a whole, that's one of the things I think you have to kind of look at if you're from the committee standpoint. I'm not saying I agree with all this, but if you're looking at it from the committee standpoint, you're talking about a team that you probably don't have a great read on right now because other than the fact that, yes, they've won 5 in a row, but they were also 10 and 12 before that happened. And so it is kind of, it's not funny, but like it is part of the equation that you and I have talked about all season, right? This is the ultimate team that every game is going to be close, it feels like. You just don't know which direction it's going to go in. It's going in their favor right now, but remember, they had lost
It
12
could
of
be
those
Tennessee or Alabama A&M. They're all close.
like it
And
just
then look it up. Yeah.
it's like you just don't know. And so I think that's what's happening here. If you're just looking at it from a metric standpoint, it almost feels like a confusion. Like, what do we do here with this team? Because yes, we fully expect it to be close, but like, which way is this thing going to go? The last 5 have gone in their favor. But remember, something else you pointed out: good wins matter. All right, Pitt still, it's a good win at this point, right? But they're, what would you say Pitt is? Probably a double-digit seed. And I'm trying to speak fast here because I got
Probably
like
about
3
a
minutes.
10.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a win. Arkansas, win. All right, they won that one by double digits. Tennessee, tournament team, they win that one, of course, at the buzzer. Auburn's a tournament team right now, but all the others, right? Like,
Blake, let me just get to the point. It is possible. I don't think it's likely. I don't think it's likely at all, but it's possible that only one of these wins ends up as a team that makes the tournament.
Tennessee.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody else has got work to do. And,
Yeah.
and that's the difference between them and Rutgers. Rutgers had great wins, and it had a lot of great wins. They have one great win and 3 good wins
All right.
and a bunch of blemishes.
I'll say this, just as my final thought here. If Vanderbilt wins out, Vanderbilt's an NCAA tournament team. And I don't care what the computers say. If they went out, if they finish the season on a 9-game winning streak, they should be in the NCAA tournament. Because they would have done enough for me at that point to counter some of the stuff maybe earlier in the season. The Grambling loss, throw it out at that point. I mean, you're not going to, but you know what I'm saying. So that's what I would say. If they go 3-1 and lose to Kentucky, I think it's tricky. But don't discount what they've done the last 5 games, but you also cannot discount the other 22 games either. That's all I'll say. Like, absolutely don't discount a 5-game winning streak that includes a win over Tennessee. But we also can't just forget all the other games just because everything has been positive the last 5 games. So I think, remember, it's the full body of work, which we've said with all the other teams. And that's why they are still battling the computers and the tournament committee at this point, because they're not on the bubble yet. Like, they're not. Like, I just don't think they are. But they keep winning and they'll get there. That's all that matters. You just have to keep winning. Lose at LSU, conversation's over. But if you just keep winning, everything will take care of itself. They just put themselves in a little bit more of a hole than other teams have, and that's why they're sitting here needing to continue to rack up wins.